I want to have a little chat with you this morning. I'm really not going to preach. This is not going to be so much of a great sermon as much as it is a little chat, as if I were just sitting with you in a little circle in an office and tell you about some things that I think God is teaching me or helping me learn, or at least I'm trying to learn. So I'm preaching to me this morning. If I happen to hit any of you in the crosshairs, then that's just an extra bonus. But I'm sort of talking to myself this morning and having a little chat with myself. Many years ago, a commercial airline pilot, every time he was starting to go into a descent near his hometown where he flew out of, he would pause over a stream in a certain valley and he would just gaze down on that stream. And this was every flight. And his co-pilot noticed it over a period of time, and finally his co-pilot asked him and said, "What's so interesting about that spot that you pause there every time we go over and look down at it?" And he said, "Well, you see that stream? When I was a kid, I used to sit there on a log fishing. And every time an airplane flew over, I'd look up and wish that I were flying that airplane. And now, every time I fly over that stream, I look down and wish that I were sitting on a log fishing." And I thought, man, isn't that just like most of us? Isn't that just like most of us? Isn't that just like me all too often? We are always wishing for what we don't have instead of being happy with what we do have. And that's really a bad way to live. Honestly, it is. The main reason people are not happy is because they are putting their happiness in the hands of another person or group of people or things. That is the main reason. Most people are not happy or satisfied. So our happiness is so often determined by how someone else has related to us, by some circumstance that has happened to us from the world, rather than being determined in a proper way. You say, what's a proper way? Well, how about this beautiful psalm? Psalm 121, where the first two verses says, "I lift up my eyes to the mountains. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth." And just to make sure, because these are really the only two text verses today, and just to make sure we burn them into your brain, I want you to read aloud with me these two verses. "I lift up my eyes to the mountains. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth." Now, I want you to understand the Jews absolutely trusted those mountains for their safety. They put their refuge in those mountains for safety from attacking armies. But the psalmist realized that his help didn't really come from those hills. It came from the one who made those hills. The psalmist is really saying here, the Lord is all I need to help me and to make me happy. The beauty of the mountains, great, they're not necessary. The beauty and majesty of the Gulf a few miles from here, awesome, but not necessary. The thrill of Disney World, not necessary. The psalmist seems to be saying, I will lift up my eyes, I look at those hills, but I want you to know that when I look at those hills, the thing that catches my attention is not those hills, but the one who created those hills. And if I have given myself to him, I can be helped and happy. I hadn't known that all my life. I hope I'm know it now. I hope I'm learning it now. But I really didn't know it in 1984 when we moved here, because I'm going to confess something that I've kind of hinted at a time or two, but I think never outright said. When we moved down here, I got very homesick. I had never lived outside of this little radius right there. Grew up here, we married here. I preached a little while right here, and then preached another little while right here, but I'd never lived out of that circle and never really had wanted to live out of that little diameter. And when we moved down here, I can remember we moved in the summer, so we got here in June, which is the worst time to get here. You need to try it. If you're going to ever move here, if you are ever going to move here, good night, move here in January, February, So it was, the first week we were here, we went to, there was an old Howard Johnson's on 41, and it had an all-you-can-eat fish night on Friday night. And we went in to eat, and I thought we were never going to get to leave, and I'm not kidding you. I thought it was a hurricane. It wasn't. It was just one of the regular afternoon thunderstorms, but I'd never been through one of them here. And I mean, we sat there for over 2 hours in that Howard Johnson's, and the water kept rising, and it was like, where have we come to? What am I doing here? I missed everything about my home. I missed my parents. I missed my friends. I missed my brother. I missed Lipscomb. I was just 6 years out of Lipscomb. I missed everything. I missed the spring. I missed the fall. I missed the leaves. I missed having some season rather than hot. We have 2 seasons here, hot and just a little less hot, And I missed everything about my home. I got very, very homesick. And I realized over a period of time, my happiness, my help was not wrapped up in the Lord, but was wrapped up in a location. And that's not what God wants. God says, I want to be your help. I want to be your happiness, not circumstances, not another person, not an area or a location. I will be your help. I love the little boy, he had been learning the 23rd Psalm, memorizing it. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. And he said, the Lord is my shepherd, and that's all I want. Maybe he didn't get it wrong. Maybe he actually had it right. And maybe that's what God is saying here. When God is your help, that's all you will want. That's all you'll need. Let me give you something. If all you get from this sermon is this, it'll help you. Don't let your happiness depend on what you see. Let it depend on the fact that you can see. Don't let your happiness depend upon what you hear. Let it be dependent upon the fact that you can hear. Don't let your happiness be dependent upon what you smell. Let it be dependent upon the fact that you can smell. Don't let your happiness be dependent upon where you have to walk tomorrow. Let it be dependent on the fact that you can walk tomorrow. Because some people can't, I learned that vividly a few years ago. When I was in high school, this young man's father was one of my best friends. His father was the quarterback on the Lipscomb football team and an all-city player, and I was the center and just a player. And but I mean, centers and quarterbacks have a unique relationship, and we were good friends all through high school. And so his dad wanted me to come see him play one of his high school games because he was a high school All-American. His name was Jonathan Schaub. Jonathan Schaub is probably the most talented person I've ever personally known, as far as personally know. God makes a few 5-talent people. He doesn't make many, and this is one of them. He scored a 1,600 on his SATs. He scored a perfect record on his ACT. He was a world-class athlete. He ran a 4.35 40. He was offered scholarships by schools all over the country, but because his grandfather had gone to Vanderbilt and because he lived in Nashville, he decided, and because he was so smart, he decided, and had longer views than just playing football, and he went to Vanderbilt, starred there for 4 years as well. And I knew his story. I told it here. I asked for prayers here many years ago when we were on McGregor, but I'd forgotten about him. I'd forgotten about him for a while until about 2 or 3 weeks ago. I was checking a Vanderbilt sports site, and it has this section they always do on Where Are They Now? And so it had a Where Are They Now section on him, and I couldn't help but remember the agonizing times that he went through. Jonathan spoke 5 languages fluently. When he graduated from Vanderbilt, he went to Kiev, Ukraine, as a missionary for a year. He came back, and he went to New York University, NYU, to law school, and he was on the streets of Manhattan one night running out of a restaurant, and him and a friend of his, another who was an NFL player, the two of them ran out, and a tractor-trailer rig, huge tractor-trailer rig in New York City, lost control and ran over him. I mean, ran over him. His dad called me the next day, David, and he said, we need prayers, need everything we can. Is he going to make it? We don't know. The amount of trauma in his body was so severe, so unfathomable, that nurses told the family they had never seen anything like it in the trauma center in the 10 years they had been there. Internal bleeding. He took 27 pints of blood during the first 2 weeks. The average human body holds 10 pints of blood. His left leg was ripped from front to back, tearing through the soft tissue and significant portions of muscle. His right ankle was broken. The bone poked through the skin. He had a cracked vertebrae. He went through multiple skin grafts. I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe it was 27 surgeries. He spent 4 full months just in the hospital in New York City. It was unbelievable. All of a sudden, this world-class mind and world-class athlete who ran a 4.35 40 and played college football in the SEC couldn't walk, may never walk again, was very lucky to be alive. Churches all over were praying for him because of the family connections. And when I read this story about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and that's why I worked it into this sermon, they were asking him on the Vanderbilt Sports website what he had learned, how he had recovered, because let me tell you, he has recovered. It was miraculous. They said 99% of people would have died. Most of them would never walk again. There's all kinds of problems. He's now not only recovered, he has 3 children. He is the Solicitor General for the state of Tennessee. You will probably hear his name someday in a higher office than that, most likely. And when they asked him what he had learned from it, here's what he said. As concisely as I can answer, I think it has changed my experience in 2 principal ways. One, I understand better than I ever did before what it means to be unable to do things, to be handicapped in ways that hard work in and of itself cannot overcome, and to experience pain that is not easily resolved. I have a profound empathy for people who are handicapped or in pain that I never had before, and I understand my own weakness as a human being in a more profound and visceral way. Second, I am constantly reminded of how lucky I am just to be alive, walking, a husband and a father, and not in a hospital or rehab. The accident taught me that dwelling or focusing on the things that are bad or the things that hurt or that I have lost accomplishes nothing and consumes my mind. But focusing on what I do have, which is made easier for me by considering what could have been, makes me appreciate the incredible blessings I have been given in my life. Where does your help come from? Where does your happiness come from? The psalmist says it better come from the Lord. There are thousands of people, even in our own home area here in Southwest Florida this morning, who are cooped up in one little room this morning as shut-ins, whose whole world is one little room, whose entire area is one bed, who would give anything in the world to be who you are and to go where you went yesterday and to be where you are today. Make your appetites simple ones. Don't want a lot of things. The more you want and don't get, the less happy you are. So make your appetites simple ones. Very quickly, how can anybody look to the hills and be happy and get the help they need? You first of all have to do what the psalmist does. Make God your desire. You know, one of the things I'm learning so much in Love Your Bible. I mean, I'm learning so much in Love Your Bible. But one of the things is we went through the Old Testament a few weeks ago. You remember when the Israelites came into the Promised Land, God gave each tribe its own portion, and the tribe of Naphtali settled over there, and the tribe of Dan settled over here, and the tribe of Asher over there, and the tribe of Reuben over here, and the tribe of Gad settled over here, and so it went all through 11 tribes. But the tribe of Levi didn't get any land. You remember that in our study? The tribe of Levi, which was going to be the priestly tribe, didn't get any land. Now, why didn't they get any land? Because they served the Lord, and the Lord said, I'll give land to Asher, I'll give land to Benjamin, I'll give land to Gad, I'll give land to Reuben, and so on, but I am going to be your land, the tribe of Levi. I am going to be your portion. I am going to be your mountains. I am going to be your water. I am going to be your desert. I am going to be your flowers. Make your happiness dependent not on a place or a thing, but on the personhood of the Lord Jesus Christ. Make God your first desire. And He can be your happy plenty. And then you'll be just as happy in one place as you are in another. Like I said, I'm preaching to myself. When I moved down here, I said, I just don't like this heat. I don't like this humidity. I still don't. Second week I was here, an anonymous note was turned in to the elders that said, this guy is too loud. Serious. We didn't have microphones either. We did not have microphones in the McGregor building at that time. And this guy is too loud. And they said, what do you want to do about this? And I said, nothing. They're right. I agree with them. But I mean, second week I was here, I was already facing a criticism. There were times I was tired, homesick, maybe even separation anxiety. My happy plenty was in the wrong place. Look, your happy plenty cannot always be dependent on how you feel, how you think at that time. Whether you have friends or not, whether you feel tired or weak or not, what kind of food you're eating, where you're living, your happy plenty has to be, I look up to the hills, and what do I see? Not these beautiful hills, but I see that my help comes from the Lord. And if you have that, you have all you absolutely have to have. And if you don't have that, you don't have enough. Make the Lord your desire. Walk with Him, talk with Him, love Him, worship Him, serve Him, and you will find, regardless of where you are, where you live, how you feel, what you see, what you hear, He will be your help and He will be your plenty. Around that time, I found out that I did a long study in the church about God's will, and I found out that unless you make God's will your will, you'll never fully be happy. God has a will for every one of us. If I'm fighting him with my will, it's never going to work out. If I'm fighting him with my will, it just won't. When I first moved here, I was more concerned with my will. Yes, I wanted to minister, but I kind of wanted to do it on my own terms. God is my witness. I was able to find a poem that spoke to my heart. I hung it in my office there on McGregor. And the poem goes like this. I said, let me walk in the fields. He said, no, walk in the town. I said, but there are no flowers there. He said, no flowers, but a crown. But I said, the air is thick. There's nothing but noise and din. But he wept as he led me back and said, there is more. There is sin. I said, but the sky is black and the fog is veiling the sun. But he said, souls are black who walk in darkness undone. But I said, I'll miss the flowers and friends will miss me, they say. He said, my child, choose tonight if I am to miss you or they. I begged him for more time to be given. He said, my child, is it hard to decide? It will not seem hard in heaven to have followed the steps of thy guide. So I took one look at the flowers and cast my eye toward the town. He said, my child, won't you yield and exchange your flowers for a crown? So into his hand went mine, and into my heart came he. Now I walk in a light divine, in a path I once dreaded to see. You see, we had made the decision, we had prayed about it, we had made the decision to move down here deliberately to leave the heart of Churches of Christ and the heart of the Bible Belt in Middle Tennessee. We made that decision deliberately, and then when I got down here, I didn't like it. I didn't want it. Because God's will was not my will. You know, if you are in the will of God and you love God, there are no accidents. That's the meaning of Romans 8:28. We know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. The happiest place in the world is you in the will of God. And that's you saying with the psalmist, I'll make God my help. I'll make God my desire. Then one last thing. This is so important if you really want to be happy and you want to be helped. Make others a priority. Now listen to me carefully in the next 5 minutes. Don't wander off. Needy people are everywhere. If you live to help people, all you got to do to be happy is find some people who need help, isn't it? And needy people are everywhere. If you live for others, all you have to do is find some others who need help and make others your desire, and you'll be happy. But, if happiness is dependent on others serving me, pleasing me, I can never be assured of happiness. I can never be assured of help. But if happiness is dependent upon me serving others, I can have it anytime I want it. I can have it anytime I choose it. A Christian need never complain, because complaining always comes from circumstances. I tell you what, it's so hot today I can hardly stand it. Well, if he is your will and he is your desire and he is your plenty, don't worry about whether it's hot or not, right? People move here from the north all the time. Some of you did. And they move down here because they say, I'm tired and sick of this snow and this cold weather all the time. I'm just going to move to Florida. And they get down to Florida, and they've been here a few months, and they say, I'm tired of this humidity. This humidity is around year-round. I'm going to move out to Colorado and retire there instead. And they go out to Colorado, and they gripe about the altitude. I can hardly catch my breath out here. You see what I'm saying? I could go on and on with that forever. I could. I'm simply saying, if you ever fall in love with Jesus and make him your desire and make other people your priority, you won't have to worry about help. You won't have to worry about being happy. You won't. Lord, help me to live from day to day in such a self-forgetful way that even when I kneel to pray, my prayer shall be for others. Help me in all the work I do to ever be sincere and true, and know that all I do for you must needs be done for others. And when my work on earth is done and my new work in heaven's begun, may I forget the crown I've won while I'm thinking still of others. Others, Lord, yes, others. Let this my motto be: help me to live for others so that I may live for thee. And when that becomes your desire, you don't have to have anything else. You don't have to have the mountains. You don't have to have the Gulf. You don't have to have constant pleasure and entertainment. You know why? Because you lift up your eyes to the hills. Where does your help come from? It comes from the Lord. You say with the little boy, the Lord is my shepherd. That's all I want. I'm going to prove to you how important this is. Hogan and Eli, stand up. You too, since you were laughing with him about something. Were y'all laughing at me? No? If I asked you what you were laughing about, would you tell me? Hey, stand up. You look kind of lonely there. Stand up. You look kind of lonely there too. I love this front row. I really do. Love this front row. You wouldn't tell me what you were laughing about, probably, would you? I wouldn't if I were you. Just trying to help you out there. I'm going to ask all of you a question, but I'm going to focus mostly on the two older ones. All right, I'll ask you a question. What would you say if I said, I'm going to give you $1 million?
I'll take it.
Okay. Mm. What would you say if I said, I'm going to give you $10 million?
I'll take it.
What if I said, there's only one stipulation? Do you want to know the stipulation? The stipulation, I'm going to give you $10 million. The stipulation is, you won't wake up tomorrow morning. You'll be gone. You'll be dead. Would you take it?
No, sir.
You wouldn't? Really? You wouldn't? All right, you can be seated. Do you know what they just taught you? Do you know what they just taught you? Everything has a value. Everything has a value, and what they just taught you is that tomorrow morning is more valuable than $10 million. Well, if that's the case, why don't you, when you wake up tomorrow morning, act like it? Act like it. See, everything has a value. What do you really value? Here's what I'm trying to say to you today. Make the Lord your desire. Make the Lord's will your desire. Make others your priority. And when you do that, you will have your happiness. You will have your help. You will have all the value in your life that you need. But recognize it, for goodness sakes.